My wife and I were married in 2017 at the Church of the Little Flower in Coral Gables, Florida. It was the kind of wedding where you invite everyone you are supposed to invite, even the relatives you are not particularly close with. That included a few family members neither of us were fond of, simply because it felt like the right thing to do. One of those people was my wife Allie's estranged aunt, Chelsea. Chelsea had struggled with serious drug issues in the past. Her addiction created a divide between her and much of the family, and over the years she became someone most people kept at a distance. Still, she received an invitation. When she arrived at the ceremony, she brought a date with her, which caught some of us off guard. The man did not exactly make a great first impression. From the moment I saw him, something about him felt off. It was not in a harmless or quirky way. There was just an unsettling vibe that I could not ignore. After the ceremony, it was time for photos. The 6 bridesmaids, 6 groomsmen, Allie, and I moved to a beautiful backyard area on the church grounds where our photographer was waiting. A few close relatives from both sides joined us to watch, while most of the other guests headed over to Comer Hall for the reception. Chelsea and her date, whose name I learned was Rob, also stood nearby while we took pictures. That was when things started to feel uncomfortable. The bridal party would joke around and laugh naturally, but then Chelsea or Rob would suddenly shout something strange or inappropriate. Every time they did, it killed the mood and left everyone standing there in awkward silence. It happened repeatedly. We would start to relax again, and then one of them would blurt out another odd comment. You could feel the tension building as we all silently braced ourselves for whatever would come next. I remember wishing they would just wander off and leave us alone. Eventually, we wrapped up the photos and made our way to Comer Hall, the reception space connected to the church where food and drinks were being served. As the groom, I barely had a moment to breathe. People constantly came up to congratulate me, shake my hand, and start conversations. I did not even get a proper chance to eat. At one point, Rob approached me again. He grabbed my hand and congratulated me, his breath unpleasant and his arms covered in scars. He wore a stained gray polo shirt and looked generally unkempt. His tone was loud and carried an edge that felt almost disrespectful. I forced myself to remain polite until he finally walked away and returned to Chelsea. That was the last time I saw him that night. Later, I noticed Chelsea sitting alone at her table. I asked Allie where Rob had gone, but she had no idea. After Chelsea had been sitting by herself for quite some time, Allie went over to check on her and asked where her date was. Chelsea said she had not seen him in over an hour. She also mentioned that she had met Rob in rehab and that they had only gone out together 4 times. Hearing that made both of us uneasy. We asked some of our parents and close relatives to discreetly look around and see if he was still at the reception. Then we received troubling news. One of my relatives said that several gifts stored in the designated gift room were missing. Our minds immediately went to Rob. An employee made an announcement over the microphone, asking guests to keep an eye out for him. Chelsea tried to call his phone, but then realized she could not find her own phone either. The situation definitely put a shadow over the evening, but we refused to let it completely ruin our wedding. Our parents contacted the police and handled things quietly on the side, using whatever information Chelsea could provide about Rob. After the reception ended, a few close friends joined us at our hotel room for a small after-party. In the middle of everything, Chelsea texted Allie asking for our home address, saying she had forgotten to give us her gift and needed to drop it off. Allie sent the address without thinking much of it. Not long after, we received a phone call from Chelsea's number. Allie lowered the music and put the call on speaker. There was a man on the other end, breathing heavily into the phone. It felt like something straight out of a horror movie, as if he was deliberately trying to frighten us. Allie kept asking where Chelsea was, but there was no response. Eventually, the caller hung up. Allie then called her grandmother, the only family member close enough to know where Chelsea was staying. Her grandmother confirmed that Chelsea was spending the night there. When Chelsea got on the phone, she explained that she had lost her phone at the wedding and did not remember her Apple ID or password, so she could not track it through Find My iPhone. We assumed Rob had taken it. Now we were worried. If he had her phone, he had our address, and he would know we were not home. Since we had been drinking, we could not safely drive back. We asked my dad to stay at our house for the night and keep an eye on things. He agreed without hesitation. The next morning, we woke up to multiple missed calls and texts from my dad. He told us that someone had been tapping on different windows throughout the night, almost as if they were trying to intimidate him. He contacted the police, but by the time they arrived, no one was around. Later that day, we went to the police station to see if anything could be done about Rob. Unfortunately, without security footage showing him taking the gifts from Comer Hall, and with Chelsea's phone either turned off or destroyed, there was very little evidence to act on. Chelsea later told us that she and Rob had argued that night. He apparently believed we disliked him and claimed that we had somehow sabotaged him. Hearing that only strengthened our suspicion that he was behind the missing gifts, the creepy phone call, and the disturbances at our house. After that weekend, we never saw or heard from Rob again. As for Chelsea, the entire experience created even more distance between her and the rest of us. We gradually stepped back from that relationship, deciding it was better to keep our lives separate from that kind of chaos. Our wedding was simple and relaxed, held on the beach with mostly close family and friends in attendance. My wife, who I will call Tricia, definitely had a longer guest list than I did. One name on that list stood out to me, though. She invited her ex-boyfriend, Kyle. At the time, I was not completely sure how I felt about that. I told myself it was fine because she had always said they stayed close friends after their breakup. I did not want to seem insecure, especially on such an important day, so I acted supportive and unbothered. Around 75 guests came to the ceremony, and Kyle was one of them. With everything going on, I pushed any uneasy feelings to the back of my mind. Kyle was polite and friendly toward me, but during the reception, I started noticing how often he was talking to Tricia. When he was not directly speaking to her, I would catch him glancing in her direction. We were officially married at that point, and logically, I knew he did not stand a chance. So I tried to convince myself that I was just overthinking things. Still, it bothered me a little. Another detail that stuck with me was that Kyle showed up alone. For some reason, that felt strange, like he could have easily brought a date, but chose not to. That night, Tricia and I stayed at a beautiful waterfront hotel. The following day, we returned to our new house. A few people who were unable to attend the wedding stopped by to congratulate us and drop off gifts. To my surprise, Kyle showed up too. We had only recently moved into the house together. Kyle said he wanted to see the new place and give us his gift since he had not handed it to us at the reception. He gave Tricia an envelope and a small foot-long teddy bear holding a heart. The heart had our initials stitched on it. I have to admit, it looked thoughtful and sweet. We gave him a tour of the house, and he stayed for a beer. After that, he said he should head out and congratulated us again before leaving. Inside the envelope was a card with $100. As kind as the gifts appeared to be, I still felt in my gut that he had lingering feelings for Tricia. I eventually asked her if she could scale back their friendship a little. She did not see what I was seeing. She insisted they were simply close friends and that there were no romantic feelings left on either side. She sounded confident, almost frustrated that I would even suggest otherwise. The teddy bear ended up on the dresser alongside some of the other wedding gifts. Later that night, while Tricia and I were in bed enjoying a romantic moment, I suddenly paused. I heard a faint sound that caught my attention. It was subtle, like a tiny electrical vibration. I looked around and spotted my phone on the nightstand. I assumed it had buzzed with a notification and let it go. About half an hour later, lying in the dark, I brought up Kyle again. I asked Tricia if he had texted her since the wedding. She said he had, and I felt irritation creep in. I told her I did not want her talking to him anymore. She became defensive, accusing me of implying that she was interested in him. I clarified that I believed he was still interested in her. Why else would he stay so involved in his ex-girlfriend's life like this? She reassured me that she did not view him romantically at all, that she was no longer attracted to him, and that she ended the relationship for a reason. She agreed she would reduce contact with him. I apologized for coming at her so strongly, and we went to sleep. The next day, when I came home from work, Tricia told me that Kyle had suddenly blocked her on Instagram. When she texted him asking what was wrong, he replied, "What do you care? I heard what you said." When she tried to respond and ask what he meant, she realized he had blocked her number too. I wondered if she might have accidentally called him while we were talking the night before. She checked her call history, but there was no outgoing call to him. Strangely, I was not angry. If anything, it confirmed what I had suspected. He still had feelings, and now he was removing himself from our lives. That night, while we were in bed discussing it again, I heard that faint electronic sound once more. This time, I knew it was not my phone. My eyes drifted toward the dresser and landed on the teddy bear. A cold feeling settled in my stomach. I got out of bed, walked over, and picked up the bear. The moment I held it, I felt something was not right. I went into the kitchen, grabbed a knife, and carefully began cutting it open. Tricia realized what I was thinking almost instantly. Inside the bear's head was a small square device, wired to a tiny camera hidden behind the left eye. There was also a microphone connected to the left ear. Everything was attached what looked like a Bluetooth transmitter that could easily connect to a phone and send or receive data. My heart was pounding as the reality sank in. That same night, we went to the police station with the bear and filed a report. After that, we hired a lawyer and pressed charges against Kyle for invasion of privacy. The case went to court, and the judge ruled in our favor. Kyle was ordered to pay each of us $15,000 in damages. Tricia also obtained a restraining order against him. That was the last time he had any direct involvement in our lives. Even so, there are moments when we still worry about what he might be capable of. If someone is disturbed enough to plant a hidden camera inside a wedding gift and spy on us in our own bedroom, it is hard not to wonder how far they might be willing to go. I live in the kind of quiet town where people rarely worry about locking anything. Most nights you could leave your car unlocked without a second thought. Honestly, plenty of neighbors even leave their front doors unlocked. Crime is almost unheard of, and my house sits on a dead-end street with barely any traffic. One evening I got home around 8 after working a 12-hour shift. I was drained and just focused on making a late dinner. While I was in the kitchen, the phone rang. As soon as I answered, I heard nothing but the click of someone hanging up. I cannot say for sure if that call had anything to do with what happened later, but thinking back on, it makes the whole thing feel even more disturbing. On nights when I get home that late, my routine is simple. I cook, eat, clean up, shower, then lie in bed watching television for about an hour before going to sleep. That night followed the same pattern. I was completely worn out, both physically and mentally. Because of that exhaustion, I made a mistake I would end up regretting. I was in bed watching The Sopranos for probably the third time through the series. When I am that tired, I sometimes fall asleep with the television still on. That is exactly what happened. I woke up sometime later to the show still playing. Apparently, I had slept through 2 full episodes. I reached around in the dark for the remote and turned the television off. Once the room went quiet, I could hear faint creaking sounds beneath the carpeted floor. At first I told myself it was nothing, but then my body flooded with adrenaline. I stared across the dark bedroom and thought I could make out the shape of a wide figure standing there. I quickly pointed the remote back toward the television to turn it on and light up the room. Before the screen even flickered to life, I felt myself choking on my own breath as I tried to whisper, "Please leave." The television came back on, casting a bluish glow across the room. That is when I saw her clearly. A woman stood there wearing a wedding dress. A veil draped over her face. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. I was frozen in complete shock. I pushed myself upright and pressed back against the headboard, unable to move. The woman slowly walked toward my bed. In a low whisper she repeated, "Where is my groom?" over and over. Each time she said it, her voice grew louder. The whisper turned into shouting. She grabbed the edge of my mattress and started shaking it violently. I finally found my voice and screamed at her to leave me alone. I jumped off the bed, shoved her away, and ran into the bathroom across the hall. I slammed the door and locked it. She followed me immediately. She twisted the handle and pounded on the door, still shouting, "Where is my groom?" I yelled that I was calling the police. Thankfully, my phone was in my hand. On the other side of the door, her shouting shifted into crying. She continued banging and repeating herself in a frantic tone. The last words I heard her say were, "I have to get to my wedding." Then I heard heavy footsteps stomping down my stairs. She was screaming and sobbing as she went. A moment later, the front door slammed shut. I was already on the phone with 911, trying to explain what had just happened. Once I felt safe enough, I stepped out of the bathroom and checked the living room. She was gone. I went outside to see if I could spot which direction she had taken, but she had vanished. A police officer arrived soon after. I described her as a larger woman in a white wedding dress, with a veil covering her face. I told him how she kept shouting, "Where is my groom?" and saying she had to get to her wedding. I could not tell him which way she had gone. The street only runs one direction, but there are also woods off to the right. After working that long shift, I had completely forgotten to lock my front door. It was something I never really worried about before. That night proved how foolish that was. Even in the safest neighborhoods, you are not always protected from unstable people wandering around. I have no idea who that woman was or what state of mind she was in, but she clearly needed serious help. I can only hope the police found her that night and got her somewhere safe where she could receive the care she obviously required.